You've probably wondered when you're looking at a saddle, a used one to buy, or say your horse wasn't acting right and somebody told you that it might be the saddle. You probably wondered whether your tree was broken or not. Well, I'm Nick Pernokas and I'm a custom saddle maker. I'd like to show you how to check your tree to see if it's broken, and I'm also going to explain a little bit about a broken tree. Generally nowadays in modern saddles, most saddle trees break right behind the swell. That's where your stirrups hang. It's the thinnest part of the tree, and generally if a horse hits the saddle horn or something happens, that's where they break. I have seen some cantles come in. Sometimes they'll break at the base of the cantle if a horse rolls over on them. The good news is most saddle trees aren't broken. I check them for ropers all the time, mine and others, and 95% of them aren't broken. And a lot of times it's because of the way they're checking the trees that they worry about it. So I'm going to show you a little bit about checking your saddle tree. Let me show you what a tree looks like in its raw state. This is your very basic wooden saddle tree. And this is before it's covered with either fiberglass or rawhide. And you can look at it and see it's actually not, it's light and it's not very stout until it's encased. This becomes very strong once you cover it with rawhide or fiberglass, but it can break easier if it doesn't have anything on it. This is an old saddle tree that I've had. I have a series of these for fitting horses' backs, and this is probably 20 years old. And you can see a little hairline crack right in the swell here. Just from sitting here, the wood's dried out. And then when I say fragile, I mean this is just a pine or lodgepole pine or whatever your particular tree maker uses to make them. They're usually a lighter wood, though. One thing that's a misconception is that a lot of people think the saddle tree breaks in the swells, and a lot of them think that as the saddle gets older it can spread or get narrower because the swell will change. And that comes from the old days of building saddles. The first saddles that were made with swells, full swells, actually had a seam in the middle of them, and they're dovetailed there. That's the technology they had. They build two pieces of wood and they put them together in the center right under the saddle horn. So as the saddle aged, a lot of times the swell would open up and the bars would come apart. And that's where you get the idea about a saddle spreading when it's older. A guy named Ray Holes invented laminating swell forks. So this is actually a laminated fork made up of 3 pieces of wood, and they go full length across the front, so you very rarely see them break. You do see hairline cracks like this in a lot of old trees. It's just if I change the horn in one, a lot of times I'll find some old cracks and they're roping at them. They're not bothering anything. There's enough layers of wood in here that it sort of reinforces each other in a lot of different directions and angles. Again, as I said, most saddle trees break right here, right behind the swell. And again, sometimes you can have the cantle break loose at the base of it. This is a wooden tree that's been encased with rawhide, and you can see how much stronger it looks. It's way stouter than the other one. And it's very rare to break a completely covered tree. It can happen. A horse can tear up anything, as you probably well know. I'll show you next on how to check to see how the tree is broken. I'm going to show you how to check your tree and see if it's broken in your saddle. First, I'm going to show you a raw tree that's not built yet. Now, you'll notice I put the saddle forward so it's resting on the horn and on the bars, those 3 places. And I put my hands on the cantle back. You want to push the cantle back, and I push as hard as I can up and down, and you shouldn't have any noticeable give. Now, in a cutting tree with really thin bars and 1 layer of rawhide, sometimes you can feel them flex a little. They're not broken. That's just a little bit of give to the tree. But generally, you can't feel anything. And that's pretty much what your saddle should feel like. Now, I'm going to show you where I do it on a saddle and show you the pitfalls of checking your tree. This saddle, you may have noticed, it belongs to my friend J.D. Tadlocks. He sold a lot of saddles for me over the years. And it's to get new sheepskin underneath here. So we want to do the same thing I just did with the horn on the concrete and the skirts, front edge of the skirts down, and you have to reach under the cantle binding or the Cheyenne roller. You don't push on that, you push on the cantle back here, and you push as hard as you can. And you should, if you have a noticeable amount of movement, you'll be able to tell if the tree's broken or not. Now, the things that can mess you up a little is if the back of this cantle, if the leather's loose, like this is pretty tight, but on some saddles, the Cheyenne roll's loose, they're assembled a little differently. And some people just push on a Cheyenne roll anyway, and you're going to be able to, this saddle here is 20 years old, you're going to be able to get a slight amount of give. That's why you push on the tree. The other thing is some horns aren't attached real well, they're not nailed to the tree under here, so when they get used a little, they get loose. See, this one doesn't have any give, but a saddle horn can get loose, so when you put this down, you might get some movement and it's in your saddle horn, not in the tree, and it's nothing serious. So you want to make sure you're just pushing on the firm part and your horn's not moving. And I've seen trees that were broken, and when you picked them up, they were like picking up a bag of old tin cans. They were broken that bad and guys were using them. So you definitely can feel something if the tree's broken. 95% of them are not broken, but it's a good thing to be able to know how to check. Well, I hope this helps you a little bit today. Understand a little bit more about how a saddle tree breaks and how to find out if your saddle tree is broken. It just gives you a little more peace of mind that way. And I'd like to thank the folks at GHN for having me on today. If you have any more questions, please just put them in the comments down below this video and we'll answer them one way or another. And if you like the video, push like, and if you really like the video, go ahead and subscribe to the GHN. It would help them keep bringing you this kind of handy information. And if you have any more questions, you can reach out to me, Nick Pernokas, at Pernokas Custom Saddlery in Stephenville, Texas, and I'd be glad to help you. Thanks for watching.